أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد أشرف الخلق وسيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا سهلا رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي اللهم أخرجنا من ظلمات الوهم إلى نور الفهم وأكرمنا بمعرفة العلم وزين أخلاقنا بالحلم يا أرحم الراحمين اللهم زك نفوسنا أنت خير من زكاها أنت وليها ومولاها أصلح اللهم قلوبنا اللهم أصلح قلوبنا اللهم اهد قلوبنا إليك اللهم اهد قلوبنا إليك اللهم اهد قلوبنا إليك اللهم إنا نعوذ بك من قلب لا يخشع ومن عين لا تتبع ومن نفس لا تشبع ومن دعاء لا يستجاب له يا رب العالمين اللهم إنا نعوذ بك من سيء الأمراض والأسقام ونعوذ بك من مرض القلوب نعوذ بك من عمى البصيرة اللهم ارزقنا الفهم عنك والبصيرة في أمرك والنفاذ في طاعتك والإصغاء إليك والاستجابة إليك يا رب العالمين. Oh Allah, we call upon you, pray to you, we beseech you, we ask you by names and attributes to better our hearts and to purify our souls. We ask you to rid our souls from any diseases and to bless us with spiritual clarity, to make us of those who experience spiritual clarity and taste the sweetness of faith within. We ask you, O Allah, to rid our hearts from the disease of arrogance and ostentation and envy. We ask you to rid our hearts from the diseases of bad assumptions and love of and toxic worldly attachment. We ask you, O Allah, to rid our souls of the disease of seeking repute and boastfulness and the disease of miserliness and greed. We ask you, Allah, to relieve our souls from the disease of vanity and to push away from us everything that bars us and blocks us from you and from your pleasure. Ya Rabbil Alameen, we ask you, O Allah, to make us students of our souls and to make us of those who draw closer to you and your pleasure and to your Jannah with every passing day in our lives until we meet you and you're pleased with us. Ya Rabbil Alameen. Ameen, ameen. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Amma ba'd. Jazakumullah khair for attending today. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept from us all and bless this course and put in it a lot of benefit. Allahumma ameen. We're going to be continuing with the next disease now, inshallah. And if time permits, we're going to go over a second. The two diseases that I have for today are su'al dhann, bad assumptions or negative feelings, negative thoughts, depending on how you want to translate it. And the other one is false hopes, amani, false hopes, wishful thinking. And both of these are closely associated. They are actually among the most sensitive diseases of the hearts. Especially this first one that we're going to be speaking about, su'al dhann. Su'al dhann, bad assumptions, negative thoughts, is actually one of the most unruly diseases of the heart. And when I say unruly disease, it's something so difficult to escape because it's something that human beings by nature can easily fall into. And at the same time, it's something that has deep ramifications on us, our relationships, our relationship with Allah, and our relationship with people. You know, and the reason why I say it's something so easy for human beings to fall into by nature is because everything about us can be traced back to perception, understanding, experience, everything about us, right? The way we view the world, what I see, right? What I see, how I interpret things. This is central to how human beings function. Meaning that I don't have any avenue to absolute truths coming in unless I'm taught them. And even when I'm taught them, I need to understand them, and my understandings will be different than your understandings. People have different levels of understanding. So really the whole human experience is about perception. It is about perception. Think about the story of Adam and Iblis. Iblis's perception led him to believe that Adam should have not been made superior to him in any way. And because of this perception, he committed the ultimate sin. He directly defied Allah Azza wa Jal. That's coming from a place of perception. أَنَا خَيْرٌ مِّنْهُ. I'm better than him. You see how impactful, one of the things that you learn through the books of Tazkiyah is that thoughts are the precursors to action. That's what it is. That's why they say it's not enough for you to be watchful, mindful of your actions. It's not enough for you to hold yourself accountable for what you do. Because really, if you want to be ahead, you need to be mindful of what you allow yourself to think. Right? Think about that. If you really want to be ahead and avoid a lot of regretful situations, then you need to be mindful of what you allow yourself to think. And this is a very, very difficult task. It's a very difficult task because, again, some of these things are by nature. They're by nature, right? If I see a cup in front of me, by nature, I could choose to look at the empty half or the full half full or half empty, right? I could choose. These are choices. If I see the empty half, it doesn't necessarily make me a bad person. It doesn't necessarily make me a bad person, but that's only the start of it. That's only the start of it. This is why it's so important to understand this. If certain thought processes dominate me on the inside, they become negative modes of behavior. You see what I'm saying? So these things they don't happen by random, right? Like I said in one of the previous classes about selfishness. You don't wake up when you're 30 years old and say, hey, you know what? I think I'm going to be selfish from now on. That's not how it happens, right? These are modes of behavior that become apparent in a person's life based on compounded life experiences and how they chose to deal with all that. It becomes me. It defines me. It defines me as a person. So, that's how I should understand su'u dhann. Su'u dhann is this thing that human beings could naturally fall into because things relating to human beings go back to perception. But if I feed this fire, it'll continue to expand and expand and expand, and you will find that the person's inclination to always assume the worst things becomes something pathological. The person allows themselves to feed these toxic thoughts to the extent that they can't be positive, even if they wanted to, because now it's something pathological. That's it. It's become my mode of living. Mutashaiman da'iman, right? Mutashaiman da'iman. Mutasha'im, you guys know what mutasha'im means? Who knows what mutasha'im means? Pessimistic. Pessimistic all the way. If I'm always pessimistic, there's nothing that's going to dishearten me because I'm always disheartened, right? If I have my bar so low, then I will never have hope in anything or anyone. That's not a solution, of course. But that's how some people choose to live. Mutasha'im da'im. There's a difference when you decide to lower your expectations, because setting high expectations leads to a lot of disheartenment. That's one thing. But when you go from lowering expectations to always expecting the worst from people and situations, that's a depressed life. That's a really, really depressed life. Like I said, it's interesting when you think deeply about these things. It's very, very, very interesting when you think deeply about these things, because, it's true that certain mental health issues are out of the person's hands, But many others that come about because of behavioral things are within our reach. Someone who's constantly feeding negative thoughts, bad assumptions, will find that a part of their humanity will become altered. And this is going to trigger mental health issues because of behavioral things, right? A part of their humanity is going to be altered. And this is, this is exactly, again, this brings us back to, Jazakallah khair, Allah yabarak feek. This brings us back to, building me 101. This is the fundamentals. Like, if I'm really going to endeavor the path of spirituality, then I need to understand that this path, if I really follow it, is going to help me become whole again. It's going to preserve my humanity. Because a human being with a dysfunctional soul is hardly a human being. I'm going to say that again. A human being with a dysfunctional soul is hardly a human being. And that's why they said, عليك بالروح فاستكمل فضائلها. Be keen on the soul, complete its virtues. فإنك بالروح لا بالجسم إنسان. Because you're a human being by your soul, not by your body. Right? If you really want to experience a new sense of humanity, don't ever think you can't. Don't ever think things are set in stone. All you need to do is find where the key is, put the key where it needs to be inserted, and that's right here, and unlock it, right? This is where change happens. It's not cliche stuff, right? It's not cliche stuff. If you think about this stuff deeply, this is the reality of affairs. And Su'ul Dhann teaches us this big time. Again, you might find someone who's not necessarily very ostentatious or very vain or very arrogant. You might find someone who has a humble demeanor. But it's extremely difficult. It's extremely difficult to make a claim that you've never had bad assumptions or negative thoughts about people or situations or about Allah. It's just, because this is part of the human experience. Man, I thought all the wrong things, and now I realized that Allah taught me a big lesson through this situation. I was ignorant of these realities, and with this life experience, this disease is becoming less of an issue for me. But to say that I'm not going to face this, no. I will wrongfully assume of others. That's just going to happen. That's me emerging from ignorance, right? So you'll find, ignorance and arrogance go close with each other. Ignorance and false assumptions go strongly close with each other because what? There's a beautiful quote. They say this. This is Al-insanu adu ma yajhal. The individual antagonizes that which he cannot understand. That's just human nature. I'm ignorant of this person. This ignorance could very easily lead to skepticism. And this skepticism could very easily lead to mistrust. And this mistrust could very easily lead to misinterpretation. You guys follow me along with me? Right? Very, very easy. I'm ignorant of who Fulan is. So guess what? I'm skeptical. Who is this person? Why is he talking like that? Why is he here? What does he want? Right? And then this skepticism is going to lead me to mistrust him. I don't trust this person. I'm not going to share with him anything. I'm not going to help him with that. I don't know who he is. I'm not going to trust him. And then this mistrust could very easily lead to misinterpretation. And that's why they say, one of the best way, this relates to sort of, kind of relates to what we were speaking about on Friday, in the Friday forum when we were speaking about social media and how, this disconnect with human beings leads to dehumanizing them, right? This disconnect with human interaction leads to dehumanizing people, right? I'm going to dehumanize them because I don't understand them. And when I don't understand them, I'm going to assume all the worst things about them. Very few people are able to do the opposite. Very few, and sometimes that could be a problem in itself. So very few people can find themselves, I'm going to be a completely welcoming individual, and I'm going to embrace everyone, even someone I have no idea who they are, what they're about. Some people are like that, and then when that goes to an extreme, it could be a problem too. Because this person, when they get hurt once, twice, and thrice, guess what? That door is going to seal shut. Oh my goodness, I trusted people and look at what they did to me. I trusted people and look at what they did to me, right? So let's get into this subject, su'u dhann. Again, it's closely associated with some of the most devastating behaviors. Su'u dhann, bad assumptions. What's one behavior that you associate with bad assumptions? One toxic behavior that's so common that we speak about all the time. What can you think of? Oh, there you go. You got one. Ghiba, backbiting. Gossip, su'u dhann, leads to a lot of backbiting. What else? There's one other one that's absolutely devastating to relationships and to the person who does it themselves. And the Prophet ﷺ said that the person who does this is going to be punished in their grave for doing this. The Prophet ﷺ heard someone being punished in their grave because of doing this. What is it? What is it? What is it? Hypocrisy? Can you draw me the link? How does bad assumption lead to hypocrisy? The gossip, rumors, they're close to each other. Gossip, backbiting, rumors, okay, false rumors. That's good. There's some, when you spread rumors, there's a word for it. There's some rumors that are meant to divide between people. What are those for? What are those called? There you go. Namima. Namima is one of the toxic behaviors that comes about because of negative thoughts. Su'u dhann. Namima, right? And we're going to explain how, inshallah. Sometimes it happens from a very innocent place, by the way. The shaitan is very, very, very tricky. He might come to a person, all right, brother A said something negative about brother C. So brother B felt bad, right? That he heard these negative words from brother A. So what did he go do? Instead of advising brother A, hey brother, why did you say this? Why do you feel like that? It's not very nice to say this about this brother. He goes to brother C and he says, I warn you, there's some people who are talking about you and they're saying X, Y, and Z. And you're my friend and I'm worried about your reputation, right? Oh, who said this about me? Oh, it was brother A. Brother A and C used to be best friends with each other. Very good. But now, because brother A made a mistake in the presence of a very ignorant person, this problem that was this big became this big. Now brother C will never forgive brother A. And who do we have to thank for that? Brother B. Thank you, brother B. Right? So again, it's from an innocent place, right? I'm protecting my brother's honor. What's a better way to protect your brother's honor? Maybe you could fix brother A's understandings and make sure you maintain their brotherhood, right? That's a smarter way to do it. That's a smarter way to do it, don't you think? Right? But people don't operate like this. And it causes all kinds of, ya Allah. If there was one disease that I would tell you that eats away at people's lives the most, is this one here. This one here eats away, yeah, sure, arrogance, love of this world, a lot of this stuff, very toxic, decimating stuff. But su'u dhann is something that eats away at people's lives and their relationships, and it makes a lot of life lost. A lot of life lost in nonsense. Wallahi, there's no better way to fix our life problems than going back to Tazkiyah 101, going back to studying the soul. All right, let's read a little bit about this. We're going to read from Shaykh Hamza's book, but before we get to that, let's look at a few different things. Some of these things you're going to find translated. Some of them I didn't get the time to. I will do that, inshallah. By the way, the new updated slides were added right before we started, so you can find this in the class drive. So what is su'u dhann? What is bad assumptions? We always start from a place of definitions. Definitions are critical. Definitions teach us about the framework of things. If I'm someone who's good at understanding definitions, then I'll be good at understanding concepts and ideas, because that's what definitions are, the doorway to concepts and ideas. That's why anyone who understands the power of a definition will fight for it, right? Anyone who understands the power of a definition will fight for it, right? Anyway, what does he say here? Giving precedence to negative perceptions when the truth is probable of either. That's what su'u dhann is. Giving precedence. I am choosing to embrace the negative when deep down inside the positive is possible, right? That's su'u dhann. So basically what this definition opens my mind to is, hey, you know what? If you step back and take a look at situations, you'll very often find that there's more than one way to interpret something. You know how many times this happens? All right, let's use sister now, since I already used brother. Sister A, Sister A is having a really bad day because she had to deal with a lot of really, really tough things. And this bad day affected her mood. And she came to the masjid, and she wasn't in a very, very conversational type of mood. So she was very curt, very brief, and she wasn't very smiley in people's faces. She left the masjid. And then we have Sister B, C, and D. They stayed behind, and they all looked at each other. Did you see that, sister? Man, she is so arrogant. How the heck could she think she could get away with that stuff? Who does she think she is? Why is she treating us like that? And so on and so forth. Guess what? B, C, D fell into something, su'u dhann, because they embraced the shallow appearance of things, and they didn't realize that, hey, you know what? Maybe sister, maybe I need to lighten up a bit, because maybe there's something that Sister A is dealing with that I cannot even imagine. If you saw people's personal lives, or if we saw people's personal lives, we would be much more forgiving, much more merciful with them. But because we don't, we often find ourselves falling into a disease that unnecessarily creates barriers, and sometimes these things sometimes people don't let these things go. Sometimes people don't let these things go. They will remember your facial reaction and your mood from a few months back. It happens. It happens. It's a learning experience, because you could choose to blame people. Why are you so unforgiving? At the same time, we're all human beings that are dealing with stuff. And sometimes, there's a lapse in judgment. That's the process of growth. There's always going to be this tadafor. If I give myself a chance and I actually am not quick to antagonize, maybe I'll learn to understand this. Maybe at a certain point, every single one of us will find, hey, you know what? I was kind of unforgiving in this situation. I should have been more understanding. I was wrong. Let me take a step back. Let me tell you this. This is just a general disclaimer. If I'm unwilling to do that basic human thought process that I just did right there, I will never experience true spiritual clarity. There's no way. Someone who's never willing to reassess, reconsider, modify, take something back, that person's never going to experience spiritual clarity. They will doom themselves to a lifetime of bitterness because of the diseases they allow to dominate their heart. May Allah protect us from that. May Allah always make us willing to say, you know what, all right, khalas, I did this, let me take a few steps back. Sayyidina Umar, he knew the value. That exactly tells you the value of a person. The weight of a person. Sayyidina Umar, this was his litmus test for people. When someone says something and then realizes that the truth was with something else after saying it, and they have the willingness to go back to the truth, this shows that they have a genuine nafs. They have pristine character. They have goodness in their heart. That was a litmus test for Sayyidina Umar. And that should really be the litmus test for me, for everyone. Every one of us. Let me look at all those situations where I did this. There was the possibility, even a weak possibility. You know what? You know, what did the Prophet ﷺ say about, the shaitan? The shaitan, there's this long hadith, that the shaitan came in, human form to one of the companions, and he taught him a lesson about how to do away with him, right? You want to know how to get rid of me so I don't come back to you? And he taught him how to say the mu'awwadat, the last surahs of the Quran. You want to get away with, you want to get rid of me? Say those last surahs. So then he came and he told the Prophet ﷺ this. Prophet ﷺ said, "Sadaqaka wa huwa kadhub." He spoke truth, even though he's a grand liar. He's a big liar. He spoke the truth. So even someone who doesn't really deserve my generous assumptions sometimes might actually be in the right. That's possible. Let me try to readjust my approach to things. There's this thing. Look, if I really want to have a different outlook on life, I need to be willing to do this. If I'm not, then you know what? Tough luck. I have to deal with it. Tough luck. Khalas. I've embraced negativity. Someone who embraces negativity will never see anything positive in the world. If you're someone who's in deep struggles, remind yourself of this all the time. He says, وَالَّذِي نَفْسُهُ بِغَيْرِ جَمَالٍ لَا يَرَى فِي الْكَوْنِ شَيْئًا جَمِيلًا. I guess, seeing beauty or choosing to see beauty will make you beautiful. But if you have a toxic disposition within, you will never see beauty. Even if it's right in front of your eyes. You will find a way to see everything that's bad about it. May Allah not make us like that person. May Allah, because sometimes problems create that type of attitude. We need to be very mindful and very honest with ourselves. If someone is always in tense situations, dealing with work, dealing with family, dealing with personal issues, and it's just like from problem to problem to problem to problem. Again, that whole thing, that pathological thing I said before. I might become programmed to just, oh man, there's a problem. I become programmed in a way where I always have to see fires and try to put them out, and I'll never put them out. I will never put them out. Why? Because I have a negative disposition towards life. And that's something I choose to embrace. I have chosen to embrace. Right? So this is, anyway, let's try to get through things here. Look at the next textual reference. You guys can see this, right? You guys can see it? Sort of? Not really? Is it because it's facing straight ahead? Okay. Can you come tweak it a little bit? And I'll try to see if I can. All right. What? 2 minutes? Go ahead, inshallah. Is that better a little or? Okay. And if you really can't see it, then just if you're on the WhatsApp group, you can put it on your phone. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اجتنبوا كثيرا من الظن إن بعض الظن إثم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اجتنبوا كثيرا من الظن إن بعض الظن إثم. So here, look at what Allah says in Surah Al-Hujurat. This is a textual reference. O you who believe, avoid many suspicions, for indeed, some suspicions are sinful. Now here, there's a big question. There's a big question. And do not spy nor backbite on one another. The rest of the verse goes on to say, أَيُحِبُّ أَحَدُكُمْ أَن يَأْكُلَ لَحْمَ أَخِيهِ مَيْتًا فَكَرِهْتُمُوهُ. Would any one of you like to devour the flesh of their brother while they're alive? And that's exactly how hateful backbiting is. That's exactly what it's symbolic of. Anyway, إِنَّ بَعْضَ الظَّنِّ إِثْمٍ. Some of the suspicions are sinful. إِنَّ بَعْضَ الظَّنِّ إِثْمٍ. What does this mean to you? How do you understand this? What does it mean? Who wants to share something? Yeah, that's what it's saying. Explain. Like, what do you mean? Like, when is the suspicion legitimate? Like, so is this, so basically what I'm trying to ask is this ayah condoning a form of suspicion and assumption? All right, what type of form? Like what? When would it be okay to assume? Okay, you're onto something. Why is that suspicion okay? Because what? Huh? And because the situation is what? The situation, uh, you know, uh, triggers some concerns. It triggers some concerns in you. So this, basically, some people misunderstand this. They think that it's okay to have assumptions sometimes. That's what it's saying. No, but this is not really an assumption because what? You studied the situation, right? You're looking at the circumstance, and the mu'min is not meant to be a gullible person. This gullible, unassuming person who has absolutely no assessment of the situation. No, I'm just going to believe blindly anything that's said to me. No, in fact, that could be more devastating if I choose to be that type of person. Or, no. There's a beautiful statement. Let's see if anyone knows it. Sayyidina Umar said something along these lines that explains this part. Does anyone know what Sayyidina Umar said? What did Sayyidina Umar say? Anyone know? He said, لست بالخب وللخب يخدعني. He said, I'm not a wolf. I am not someone, I'm not a fox, and neither does a fox deceive me. Meaning that I'm someone who's alert. Meaning that suspicion that's derived from some evidence based on the situation, that's justifiable. There's nothing in my deen that teaches me that, you know what, I need to just have this very clean slate. Someone tells me, hey brother, I'm in need of money, give me $1,000 because XYZ, I'm just going to give it to him right away, or else I'm going to have bad assumptions. I can't have bad assumptions. I need to believe my Muslim brother. No, you need to study the situation. You need to be someone who's not a fox. Don't deceive people. But at the same time, be aware of how deception is had. Be aware of that. Be alert. Be someone who's very mindful of situations, right? That's what we learn from this. But at the same time, إِيَّاكُمْ وَالظَّنِّ فَإِنَّ الظَّنَّ أَكْذَبُ الْحَدِيثِ. The Prophet ﷺ said this, beware of assumptions. Beware of assumptions. Because assumptions are the greatest lies. Sometimes, what people allow them, so being alert is one thing. But have some real cause for this being alert. Some people say, my dreams don't lie. If I saw someone in a dream, they must be doing something, right? Yeah, it sounds funny when I say it, but you'd be surprised. This is how people operate. I saw Fulana in a bad dream and she was looking at me in a certain way. I knew it. She must have something in her heart towards me, right? Allahu Akbar. Direct wahi. I'm serious. Being condescending, but for a reason. To show that, these are the devastating types of things that take over our lives and cause unnecessary problems. Brothers and sisters, so go on. Look at this. If you think you're immune to this, think again. There's another verse in Surah Al-Hujurat that gives us wisdom. What does it say? يا أيها الذين آمنوا إن جاءكم فاسق بنبأ فتبينوا أن تصيبوا قوما بجهالة فتصبحوا على ما فعلتم نادمين. Right? Look what the verse says. If there comes to you a disobedient one with information, investigate, lest you harm a people out of ignorance. Right? So it's saying if a fasiq comes to you. Now there's something to reflect on in this. All right. So if someone who's very honest and trustworthy comes and gives you information that is very demeaning of another Muslim, are you meant to accept it? Because this verse said fasiq, right? Like, all right, what if someone that's honest and trustworthy comes to me with information? Do I understand from this verse that if someone honest and trustworthy comes to me, that I accept it? What do you think? What do you think? Say, raise your hand. Raise your hand. You accept it? You accept his testimony. What does that mean? All right. Could Shaykh have bad assumptions too? Yeah. Shaykh could have bad assumptions too. But now here, the question is, all right, you're understanding this from the verse, right? So, isn't that what the verse is telling us? Now, all right, we have a field of study in Islam that gives us clarity on this issue. Does anyone know what jarh and ta'deel is? Anyone know what that is? Anyone knows what ilm al-jarh wa ta'deel is? Someone over there nodded their head. You know what it is? You. What's your name? I saw you nodded your head too? The one, you. Ahmed? Ahla wa sahla. You know what it is? Very good. This is a science, as he said, in the studying of the narrators in hadith. It's a science within the science of hadith. One thing that we learn from this assessment of narrators is the scholars set a principle. That is, التعديل لا يحتاج إلى تفسير والجرح يفتقر إلى تفسير. They said this. If you're saying something good about someone, that doesn't need evidence. It's accepted without evidence. Because what? الأصل في المسلم العدالة. The Muslim, by nature, I should have good assumptions of my fellow Muslim until I have reason to believe otherwise. That's what we learn from that, right? Like this hadith, it's mawquf, it's not hadith on the Prophet ﷺ. This hadith is mawquf. إذا رأيتم الرجل يعتاد المساجد فاشهدوا له بالإيمان. If you see someone consistently coming to the masjid, then testify to their faith, to their iman. It speaks to who they are as a person. But is this testimony necessarily always on point? No, because there's tons of people who come to the masjid who do atrocious things outside. But unless I find something to point to the contrary, this is going to be in favor of this person, right? So I don't need to explain why someone's good. I need to explain why they're bad, right? Al-jarh يحتاج إلى تفسير. Even the hadith scholars of old, even you're talking about one of the ulama of hadith, he's telling you that fulan غير ثقة, fulan كذوب, or fulan, they need to explain why that this person is not reliable. They need to explain why. Why? Because this is part of the right of my fellow Muslim. I'm not going to take something that's against them without there being some evidence to justify it. And of course, even when they speak about jarh, subhanAllah, you see the beauty of etiquette. Wallahi, someone who lives their life with etiquette, it just gives a refined outlook on things. Even when you speak about someone's negatives that would discount them from being a narrator, that needs to be extremely limited. You can't share everything. You must share what's most minimally needed to discredit their narration. That's it. You can't say everything. Right? That shows you. Even in Shahada they say this. Like, say if I know that brother A wants to get married to sister A, right? And I know certain things about brother A. I know a lot of things about brother A. But I know only one of these things would be enough for sister A to be deterred from this marriage proposal. Sister A comes asking about brother A. If I start sharing with sister A, oh, don't accept him because he did this and he said that and he took that and he did that. And you have this nice gossip party and you speak about brother A for half an hour, then is that okay? That's not okay. That's not, because even when you're speaking about things that are true about a person in that type of situation where Sister A deserves good advice, you must limit it to what preserves the honor and dignity of brother A. You see how beautiful our deen is? You see how beautiful our deen is when we truly choose to live by it? Ya Allah. That's the truth. So anyway, going back to this, why does Allah say fasiq then? Because usually the individuals who spew negativity about others are not people of goodness. Usually. And that's, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving an attribute that is inherent to people of such behaviors, right? This is usually a sign of fisq. If this person is constantly saying, oh, this person is like that, and that person's like that, and don't trust this person because of that, and this person's like, you know, everyone is low. Of course, he's up. Nothing bad about me, right? I'm going to issue a whole lot of warnings about, hey, don't trust Fulan, don't listen to Fulan. Fulan is like this, and Fulan is like that. This type of person who puts everyone else down, that's usually a sign of fisq. The one who operates in such manners is usually a person of wickedness. They're not a person of goodness, right? Anyway, so that's why he says fasiq, subhanah. That's why if you go back to the books of tafsir, even the adl needs investigation. You need to verify. Now let's look at what the story is behind this. You see it on the slide over there. It's the story of Al-Walid ibn Uqbah. This is someone who the Prophet ﷺ sent to collect zakah from Bani al-Mustaliq. And Bani al-Mustaliq, they were one of the tribes of Medina. And they were at the time new to Islam. Walid ibn Uqbah had a certain past with this tribe. He wasn't on good terms with them. And the story tells us that he was sent to their neighborhood to collect the zakah, but he was late. And when he was late, Bani al-Mustaliq were afraid. They were worried. Like, where did he go? We were expecting someone to come from the Prophet ﷺ today to collect zakah. He didn't show up. So what did they do? They sent out a group from their neighborhood to search for this messenger of the Prophet. So when he saw them coming out in a group from their neighborhood, the shaitan put a thought in his mind, a bad thought, that they're actually searching to kill him. Right? So he went back to Medina and he told the Prophet, they refused to pay zakah and considered killing me. Look, this is su'u dhann at work, a bad assumption. Right? They were actually looking for him so that they could make sure he's okay and give him the zakah. He thought, these individuals want harm for me because of the bad past he had with them. So the Prophet ﷺ considered sending troops to Bani al-Mustaliq. And this is one of the narrations. But soon after, the group reached the Prophet and told him their side of the story. And then this verse was revealed. One of the other narrations says that the Prophet ﷺ sent one of the Sahaba to observe Bani al-Mustaliq in secrecy. And he saw them praying. He saw them doing the normal functions of Islam. So he knew that this story was... So the Prophet verified. He knew that the story was untrue. And then Allah Azza wa Jal revealed this. So you see, this is a lesson from Surah Al-Hujurat in Su'u Dhann. You know, when you're talking about Su'u Dhann, it reminds you of a subject of emotional intelligence, right? You know, being able to channel your emotions in a constructive way. That relates to Su'u Dhann, by the way. It relates to Su'u Dhann. You know, one of the things that feeds bad assumptions is misinformation. One thing that feeds bad assumptions is misinformation. Right? And, you know, misinformation, you know, can cause so much danger. So much problems between people, and of course, is a person at fault for allowing themselves to accept misinformation? Yeah, but sometimes it requires a great deal of understanding and a great deal of patience to not quickly submit to misinformation. It takes a lot of understanding and a lot of patience to not submit to misinformation, right? If you find a group of brothers coming to tell you, hey, by the way, don't go to this person's store or restaurant. He treated us like this. Oh, his food is like that. Oh, and he has workers that are like this, and it's very unsanitary and very clean. They just give a whole bunch of bad reviews, and you hear about it from a few different people. It's going to cause a certain perception. You know what? For most people, it's to say, I'm not going to even waste my time. I'm not going to go near this person. Sometimes it happens with people. Oh yeah, Fulan? Fulan, you should never be his friend. This person, he's bad news. People have had bad experiences with Fulan. Stay away. There's a warning, right? And sometimes the brother would suffer because of this. And you know what? You know what else it happens a lot with? A'udhu billah. It happens a lot with things relating to marriage. Happens a lot with things relating to marriage. People are very spiteful when a relationship comes to an end. So what do they try to do? They want to paint the picture in a very false way. And they'll start telling everyone, they'll make it a mission. All right, this is coming to an end. All right, I'm going to go, make sure I'm going to go on a few trips. I'm going to go to this masjid and talk about, and I'm going to go to this friend's house. I'm going to go to that friend's house. And I'm going to make sure everyone gets my side of the story. Why? Because I want to control the narrative, right? I want to make sure to tell people, oh, the reason why the relationship ended was because he did some unfaithful things. Oh, and because his family is like that. And because he's the one who triggered the end. Or, let me flip it, she's the one who did the unfaithful things. And sometimes it leads to something very, very nasty. We got one of the tricky questions. We got one of the tricky questions. This past Friday forums, speaks to a very awful reality. But one of the questions was, should I tell my friend if I know that her husband slept with one of her friends? This was one of the questions. Should I say this? Should I go share this information with her? Right? And of course, my response was very, very clear. Well, what do you think? Before I share my response, what do you think? I know that Fulana's husband, or I think I know that Fulana's husband, he's not a good person. And our other friend told us that he did something very, very wrong with her. And I feel bad for my friend. I don't want her to be with someone who's cheating on her. Should I share this with my friend? Huh? You had your hand up. What's up? Why? 4. Huh? Okay, he gave me 1. You shouldn't be revealing other people's sins. This is 1. All right. Why else should I not share this type of information? Go ahead. There you go. Misinformation. You would like to think that people would not function like this, but a'udhu billah, when people are in very, very tough situations, you see, there's shayateen al-ins, right? You guys hear of shayateen al-ins, right? The devils from among human beings. The devil among the jinn gets tied up in Ramadan. The devil among the human being doesn't get tied up, right? You see the worst aspects of humanity come out. Sometimes it could be from spite that, how could you even imagine someone would spread a rumor? Sometimes it's because I'm spiteful that our marriage relationship didn't work out. So I'm going to spread a rumor, right? I was interested in brother Fulan or sister Fulan, and it didn't happen. I'm angry. Brother Fulan or sister Fulana got him instead. You know what? Let me say something really bad about brother Fulan just so I could end their marriage. Do people do stuff like that? People do stuff like that. وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. And you'd like to think that, no, come on, man, this is like from movies, or this is the non-Muslim community. There's no way that the Muslim community would, go that far. Trust me, it happens. And worst. وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. It happens and worst. This is the dangers of misinformation. Misinformation could create these kinds of barriers. Like, let me give another example. Like people want to make sure that brother A is not left with any friends. So I'm gonna smear this person's reputation. I'm gonna create a whole lot of false lies about brother Fulan, who he is and what he's about. And then, if the few people who actually get to interact with brother Fulan say, oh man, like, I didn't think you were like this. Like, there was a completely different image painted in my head. That you are like some type of devil walking on earth. But you seem to be... People find themselves in this situation a lot because of misinformation. وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. So this is misinformation, bad assumptions. The Prophet ﷺ teaches us to... So, we should not feed suspicions within us. And we should also not feed suspicions within others. This is something Islam teaches us. Islam teaches me this. I should not feed suspicions within others. Some people now today we live in a society where people I'm carefree. I don't care what anyone thinks. I have no consideration for how others perceive me. I'm confident enough. Anyone who wants to have bad assumptions of me, that's their problem. Let them deal with it. I don't care. I'm going to do what I want to do, right? Do people talk like this? Do people talk like this? Is this a good way to talk? Well, up until now, maybe some people might say yes. Well, of course, I shouldn't care about how people think about me. What are you trying to say? Are you trying to say I should? Right? Well, I'm just going to tell you what the Prophet ﷺ did. And then you do whatever you want yourself. The Prophet ﷺ one time was standing in the dark with one of his wives, Safiya. And there was two Ansari passing by. And when they saw the Prophet ﷺ standing in the dark with a woman, they began speeding away. So the Prophet ﷺ said, "Ala rislikuma." Stop it right there. I am the Prophet, and this is my wife, Safiya. So they were dumbfounded. They said, Subhanallah, afika nashukku ya Rasulullah. Do you think that we're going to doubt you, O Prophet of Allah? So the Prophet ﷺ said to them, إن الشيطان يجري من ابن آدم مجرى الدم وكرهت أن يقذف في قلبيكما شيئا. He said, the shaitan traverses the son of Adam just like blood circulates the body. And I did not want him to cast any thoughts in your heart. So I should not feed suspicions within others. And the Prophet ﷺ teaches us this. So this sets a standard. That the mu'min avoids questionable situations, questionable circumstances. Yes, this is how I'm going to operate. So if someone's going to drag me to do something questionable, I'm not going to do it. Not because I fear people, I fear Allah. And Allah teaches me to operate like this. Like some people, again, the whole marriage thing, it's all very difficult, right? So sometimes people will allow themselves to do certain things that are very questionable, because they want to get married. Good intention, very bad procedure. Good intention, very bad procedure. All right, I want to get married. Let me meet this person all alone. You know what? Let them pick me up, and we'll be alone in the car, and we'll start doing this, and it'll happen more than once. I'm not doing anything bad. I want to get married, right? Remind yourself of this hadith. Next time your nafs tries to convince you in that way. Again, the nafs is very tricky. Nafs is very tricky. All right, let's go on. Let's move on. Look, skip this. Here's some things about the applications of that. Look at the Prophet ﷺ, he says this in the hadith. لا يدخل الجنة قتات. Someone who is nammam, someone who does namima, like we said, that's one of the behavioral things that comes about because of bad assumptions, right? Someone who does this will not enter Jannah. If you gossip to divide between people, you will not enter Jannah. What does that mean? Meaning, your road is to hellfire before it is to Jannah. Meaning that you need to be cleansed from this awful sin that you've done. People do this all the time. Like I said, when you're talking about the relationship aspects of it, people find themselves falling into this wittingly or unwittingly, intentionally or unintentionally. Sometimes they'll fuel the fires of suspicions. Oh man, do you really allow him to stay out for late hours at night? What do you think he's doing? Oh really? Do you really allow her to talk to you like that? You should really put her in her place, or else she's going to rebel against you. And then you find these chatterboxes that are, these devils that are in people's ears, right? They end up dividing between people's hearts, ruining marriages, ruining friendships, causing animosity, they're doing the devil's bidding. They're doing the shaitan's bidding. وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. Right? So that's one of the things that that we learn from the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ teaches us. All this is, you could read it on your own. Applications of emotional strength. It relates to this. So look, this subject of su' al-dhann and husn al-dhann actually relates in our relationship with Allah too. Right? Right. So this is an important thing. Bad assumptions, negative thoughts. Sometimes it's about people, and sometimes it's about Allah. And you know, this is one of the worst things that you could possibly do in your relationship with Allah, is to have bad assumptions of Him. Why? Because this is even worse than despairing from Allah's mercy. Right? This is an accusation directed towards Allah. When you have a bad assumption of Him. Look, how does this come about? Again, sometimes it happens unwittingly. People don't mean it or don't realize it. They don't realize how damaging their attitudes and their words are. Look, this hadith that tells us, saying that Allah won't forgive a person, right? Someone knew someone very mischievous, very, very bad, very far away from goodness. So what did he say? He said, Wallahi, la yaghfirullahu li fulan. Wallahi, Allah's never going to forgive this person. There's no way that this person will ever be guided, or there'll be any goodness in him, right? Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to him, ماذا الذي يتألى علي أني لا أغفر لفلان فإني قد غفرت لفلان وأحبطت عملك. Who's the one who's going to come claim that fulan has no route to forgiveness? Guess what? I've forgiven him and I've invalidated your deeds. Right? So that's one thing. Good assumptions in Allah Azza wa Jal. This is a critical attitude that the believer has. Right? We know this from the hadith, about the bitaqa, the hadith of the scroll. Who knows the hadith of the scroll? Raise your hand. What's the hadith of the scroll? Anyone know it? Hadith al-bitaqa, the hadith of the scroll. No one knows it. No one knows it. Come on, we've mentioned it in many khutbah. That's the cool thing with khutbahs. I think if I say the same khutbah every single week, maybe no one will pay attention. So let's work. What is the hadith? What is it? What happens? So what's the story? Look, this is what happens. On the day of judgment, someone is going to come forth. And there's going to be volumes upon volumes of their wrongdoing. And it's going to be weighed in the scale. And then he'll be asked, do you have anything left in your favor, in your account? He said, La ya Rabb. He says, La. No, I don't have anything. So then Allah Azza wa Jal tells him, إِنَّ لَكَ عِنْدَنَا حَسَنًا فإنه لا ظلم عليك اليوم فتخرج بطاقة فيها أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأن محمدا عبده ورسوله فيقول احضر وزنك. The hadith says, there's going to be one scroll that has La ilaha illallah and Muhammad Rasulullah, and it's going to be said to this person, come for your deeds to be weighed. And he's going to say, what is this one scroll going to do in the face of all those volumes? So then he'll be told, فَإِنَّكَ لَا تُظْلَمْ. You're not going to be oppressed. This is yours, it's going to be counted for you. So then what? The hadith tells us that the scroll outweighs the volumes, and the fatashat al-sijillat, fatashat al-sijillat. Right? Beautiful hadith. Of course, a hadith could be easily misunderstood. Right? This hadith is not meant by any stretch to say that you could do whatever you want and La ilaha illallah is going to save you. That's not what it's meant to be understood as. How did this person say La ilaha illallah? How did they live La ilaha illallah? This is what the hadith is calling us to reflect on. No, not all actions are the same. Someone saying La ilaha illallah in ease is not like someone saying La ilaha illallah in the face of great difficulties, right? Someone, you see this. So, like, there are certain factors that, that show the person's content of character in a very unique way, and then because of that act, that person's given entrance into Jannah. Think about that. That's what this hadith is talking about. Don't misunderstand it. This hadith is not saying do whatever you want. This hadith is telling us, have good assumptions in Allah, because He's the one who knows the true weight of your actions. Don't ever despair from Allah, because that's one of the biggest crimes you could commit. It's one of the biggest crimes you could commit. So that's, there was another hadith, I mentioned this here. Look, the Quran teaches us that, you'll find that these negative thoughts, this despairing attitude is very closely associated with hypocrisy. You'll find that, the more iman settles within the heart of a person, the more they will be overwhelmingly positive. It just happens like that. Doesn't mean that a mu'min can't be negative or the mu'min won't feel down and depressed. Yeah, the mu'min will be that. It will fall into those situations. Yes. وَلَقَدْ نَعْلَمُ أَنَّكَ يَضِيقُ صَدْرُكَ بِمَا يَقُولُونَ لَا تَحْزَنْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ مَعَنَا. Right? So the believer could be sad. The believer could feel constricted, could feel difficulties, and so on and so forth. But what Iman helps me do is to emerge from negative thoughts into positive ones. And you'll find that the pessimists of the Quran are the hypocrites, and the optimists of the Quran are the believers. That's just the dynamic of it, right? So look at this verse. It emphasizes that. لو خرجوا فيكم ما زادوكم إلا خبالا. This is in Surah At-Tawbah. Surah At-Tawbah tells us, if they were to go out with you, they're going to make you feel depressed. They're going to weaken you. They're going to make you lose your drive. That's what a munafiq does. That's what he brings people down. A lot of toxic energy within this person. A lot of bad assumptions, a lot of negative thoughts within this person. And this is exactly how they define friendship. Right? By the way, who is a sadiq? Who is a sadiq? من إذا نسي ذكرك من إذا نسيت ذكرك ومن إذا تذكرت أعانك. That's a true sadiq. Who is a true sadiq? When you forget, he reminds you. And when you remember, he strengthens you. That's who a true friend is. He brings you up, elevates you. Munafiq brings you down. Brings you down. Right? So, this hadith, and I'll end the subject with that before we read from our book and go to our questions for today, is the hadith tells us that the Prophet ﷺ entered upon a young man as he was dying, and he asked him, how do you feel? And he said, Wallahi ya Rasulullah, inni arju Allah wa inni akhafu dhunubi. At this point, as I'm dying, I have hope in Allah and I'm afraid for my sins. So the Prophet ﷺ said to him, لا يجتمعان في قلب عبد في مثل هذا الموطن إلا أعطاه الله ما يرجو وآمنه مما يخاف. Prophet ﷺ said, these two things that you just said, having hope in Allah, good assumptions in Allah, and fear of your wrongdoing, they do not gather in the heart of a believer in that type of situation, except that Allah will give him what he hopes and protects him what he's afraid from. So this shows you the power of positivity. Power of positivity, right? The power of positivity. It has an overwhelming impact on everything in our life. Again, it all starts from the thoughts. Like we started this class, it all starts from the thoughts. The thoughts you allow within you end up defining you. How you allow yourself to think will ultimately lead to how you will operate. Right? These are the lessons from this disease of the heart. And now what we're going to do is we're going to turn our attention to the books. And we're going to leave some time for questions in the end. By the way, as we usually do, we usually take the questions through Slido. So there's the link for the Slido. It's in the WhatsApp group. Please don't forget, if you have questions, you could put it there. Or if you want to ask your question directly, you could do that as well. But, we're winding down, so let's, if you have questions, get ready to put them in. Now, we have one of the brothers, he's going to read from us. He's going to read for us. We're reading from the chapter on negative thoughts. Negative thoughts and purification of the heart. This book here, Purification of the Heart. By me, it's page 81.
81.
By you, it might be different because it's a PDF.
Imam Mawlud?
Yes.
Bismillah. Imam Mawlud speaks next of something.
So before you read that, read the poem for us,
Okay.
the lines above.
Some assumptions are not permissible, such as holding a bad opinion about someone who manifests righteous behavior. This means that your heart is convicted and you have...
Convinced.
This means that your heart is convinced and you have judged him based on your heart's suspicious without proof that warrants such an assumption. There is nothing wrong with having doubts about someone or having a bad opinion of him if it is based on sound reasoning and it is not arbitrary. Thus, our bad opinion of some profligate whose actions indicate his corruption is not prohibited.
Yeah, very clearly, very concise, straight to the point. Look, if I need to have a criticism of a person, I need to have the criticism. That's not called bad assumptions. I'm not transgressing against my brother if I have a criticism. Of course, a criticism should not allow me to be blinded of the goodness in this person. I should be very careful of that, because sometimes when I get in conflict with a person, it might blind me to the good sides that they have within them. Don't demonize people because you got into a fight with them. This is an important thing that our deen teaches us. Go ahead.
Imam Mawlud speaks next of something that is very easy to have but is harmful to brotherhood and injurious to one's own spiritual growth. It is having a bad opinion about others, baseless assumptions, and suspicious one. This is allowing conjecture into one's heart without having facts, which is especially harmful when one harbors a bad opinion about people who are outwardly righteous in appearance, which was something that the early Muslims considered important.
Look, they have this statement, and that our scholars, they teach us this. They say, "Dima'ul ulama'i masmuma." They say that, luhumul ulama'i masmuma. They say that the meats, the flesh of people of knowledge is poisoned, in the sense that if you consume that flesh, it's going to kill you. That's what it means, right? So if you consume that flesh, it's going to kill you. So backbiting is likened to consuming your brother's flesh. Be very careful, because if this person is known to be a person of piety, a person of status, a person of knowledge, then you need to think once, twice, thrice before you speak about them, because this could come back and hurt you. This, of course, is not limited to people of knowledge. It's also of people who are known for their piety. Now, one other thing to consider in this regard is the individual who we have in Surah Al-A'raf. وَاتْلُ عَلَيْهِمْ نَبَأَ الَّذِي آتَيْنَاهُ آيَاتِنَا فَانْسَلَخَ مِنْهَا فَأَتْبَعَهُ الشَّيْطَانُ فَكَانَ مِنَ الْغَاوِينَ. It's said that the storyline behind this, of course, a lot of the information that's, the background to this is taken from the Israeliyat. However, the basic gist of it is that this is a person who had high status, but they made dua against someone whom Allah loved, one of the prophets of Allah, Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam. And this led to their ruin, leading to their ruin, end up leading to their ruin. So sometimes this happens. You need to be very, 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 very careful of it. Because it's one thing to gossip about someone and oppress them by that. That's bad enough. It's bad enough to oppress another human being by gossiping about them, backbiting, saying hurtful things that are not true. It's another thing to do it about someone whom Allah loves. Because man aada li waliyan faqad adhantu bil harb. Whoever transgresses against one of those dear to me, then let them be very careful of the punishment that's coming their way. Wallahu alam. Go ahead, read.
Scholars have advised that one should even be aware of forming conclusions based on the bad appearances of people. For it could be that God veils their goodness from others. The Arabs traditionally were keen on having the ability to see a person's inner goodness. Once an Arab man came to the Prophet ﷺ to see who he was. When the man left, some men asked him about his opinion of the Prophet ﷺ, and he said, his face isn't the face of the liar. This firasa is again having the intuitive ability to see in people things of goodness, signs of goodness or evil. The Prophet ﷺ had this ability to utmost degree and said that believers possess it also. But to lesser extent, Sidi Ahmad al-Zaruq said that every believer has the power of firasa to varying degrees based on the strength of his or her faith.
Look, there's something called firasa, and that's having the intuitive ability to see what's beyond the surface level. And of course, some people might have this because they understand people. They have this know-how to understand people. But some people, from a spiritual standpoint, they could see what's beyond the surface level. And this is exactly what he's talking about here. His face is not the face of a liar. Again, here, it's tricky. It's something that's, in order for me to experience this, my soul and my fitrah needs to be intact. If my soul is tainted with whim, diseases, and blinded by my sinfulness, there's no way I'm going to be able to have this spiritual intuition. So that's what firasa is, spiritual intuition, right? So that's why one time one of the companions, a man walked into the masjid, I think it was Ibn Abbas, and he said, why do I see these fornicating eyes? Why do I see these fornicating eyes? So the man said, is this wahi after the Prophet? Is this revelation after the Prophet? And Sayyidina Ibn Abbas said, no, this is light that Allah casts in the heart of the believer, right? To have this type of spiritual intuition. So that's exactly what he's talking about here. And about the first part of it, this is something important to reflect on. Beware of forming conclusions based on the bad appearances of people. Sometimes it might come as a test for you. Sometimes it might be as a test for you that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will show you something that dissuades you away from a person. And it's a test for you. How are you going to deal with this bad thought? Right? So and our Salaf actually, they teach us this. One time a person, I shared this before, one time a person saw someone crying in salah, very emotional, and they said to themselves, Wallahi, he's only doing this out of riyat. He's trying to show off. That's why he's so emotional in his salah. So he said, I was denied Qiyamul Layl for 6 months because of this negative thought that I allowed in my heart. Right? So sometimes these things have a consequence to them. There was one, and I shared this one too, but because it's beneficial here. Abu Sulaiman al-Darani, one of his students, he was one of the, teachers, one of the very, spiritual figures in the early history of Islam. And one of his students came to him and he said, I feel a discomfort with fulan. I feel like, my heart, this person just doesn't sit well with me. I feel uncomfortable with them. I don't know why. So then the sheikh told him, I feel the same exact way. But perhaps this is because of a qaswa, a rigidness in our souls that we've been denied the love of good people. So you see how the Shaykh twisted it? Hey, be careful, all right? Don't think like this. Because you know what? Maybe you're not comfortable with this person because there's something wrong about you, right? Maybe you're not comfortable. You ever thought about that? Right? Some people think they have this, oh, I have this great intuition, right? I don't know. I just get uncomfortable with certain people, and I feel like I could sense people who are fake. Some people think, a'udhu billah. Sometimes the nafs just like, you know, sometimes you need to say it out loud to hear how funny it is, right? Sometimes people convince themselves of all kinds of things that are so self-aggrandizing. It's just hideous. It's just hideous. I have this sense in me that I know when people are fake and when people are like, disingenuous and did you ever think maybe you're the problem? Maybe you don't like these people because you're the problem, right? Ask yourself that. This is the true spiritual way. The true spiritual way is if your nafs gives you an inclination, accuse it. Don't accept your nafs. If you do this enough, you're going to find yourself developing a new type of spiritual clarity. Wallahu alam. Go ahead, read on.
But having a bad opinion of someone without cause is considered a malady of the heart. O you who believe, avoid suspicion, for some suspicious is sinful. Often associated with this disease is backbiting ghiba, that is, speaking ill of another person behind his or her back. It is possible to backbite in an unspoken form, as when a person has unfounded negative thoughts against another person. Suspicion in the heart that affects one's thought and opinion of another person is considered backbiting of the heart. Ghibat al-qalb. This is also not permissible. The Prophet ﷺ said, beware of a bad opinion because it is the most false of speech. If someone says to you that a given person is bad, ask for proof. Without proof, it is tantamount to a lie. The sacred law of Islam Sharia is based on proof and not conjecture.
Go on.
Imam Mawlud says next that having doubts about someone's character is not forbidden if it is based on reason and observable evidence. This is different from suspicion that tends to be judgmental and oftentimes specious. God says, O you who believe, if an ungodly person brings you some news, then seek out its veracity. If someone known to openly indulge in major sins comes with some news, one should not accept it. Without circumspection, Sidi Ahmed gave good advice centuries ago that remains relevant. Do not trust anyone with matters related to your religion, your family, or your wealth until you have tested him at least 1,000 times. According to this advice, one should test someone's sincerity, trustworthiness before entrusting him with anything significant. If there is much corruption in a given generation, it is best to be wary of people until their goodness becomes manifest. This is the advice of scholars. There are many people who have no qualms in deceiving and cheating people. They will adorn their faces with smiles and communicate that they are wonderful people, but they will cheat a person when the opportunity arises.
Yeah, so look, this is the other thing about this. This is something we didn't mention. Is it okay for a person, or is it good or healthy for a person to create boundaries for themselves and to be very thoughtful and mindful of what they share from their private lives? Absolutely. And, this is actually where the emotional damage comes, when someone's not mindful of this. That, I'm just gonna, I'm gonna assume the best in everyone, and I'm gonna be like very open doors to everybody, and I'm gonna let anyone inside my heart, and I'm gonna share with them my deepest secrets. The worst, it usually comes from a place of lack of experience. People who have life experience usually won't do something like this. But someone in their earlier years, someone who hasn't been in difficult situations, might not have the know-how to avoid this. Don't share your private things, and this is not because you assume ill of people. This is because it is important for me to, it is very, very important for me to be very thoughtful, strategic, to be very considerate to the potential things that could happen if I share my private things with another human being, right? I'm not going to assume bad of people, but it's going to take time for me to allow someone to those most intimate aspects of my life. That's not bad assumptions. It's not bad assumptions. It's learning from life. Because if you share your information with certain people, it might open for you doors of problems that that may be difficult to emerge from. So this is a very, very important lesson that he sees here. Realize the difference. Creating boundaries is different than having bad assumptions. Creating boundaries is different than having bad assumptions. Go ahead.
Scholars also say that one should be circumspect with the dispensation of zakat charity in times in which goodness prevails over corruption. The default is to accept the word of people who claim they qualify for zakat and ask for it. But when corruption and fraud are prevalent, then those responsible are obliged to be righteous,
Obliged to be
obliged
rigorous.
to be rigorous in their investigation. Unfortunately, some people will often present themselves as mired in poverty, though they are well off.
Yes. Yes, this is very, very true. Look, and this is how we balance this out. This is a really, really important point here too. Really important point. Now, sometimes people will guilt trip me, strong arm me, tap on certain nodes that they know usually a believer has, right? All right. Brother, you're not going to help me for the sake of Allah? I'm really in need. Please. I'm your fellow Muslim. Why are you doubting me? Right? And then you feel so bad, and let me just give him whatever's in my pocket, right? Now, what this person did is inshallah, you'll be rewarded for what you give. But what this person did is so wrongful, and so, this type of behavior that should not be accepted, right? This person should be clarified to know, look, for the sake of amana, I need to uphold the amana. Especially if I'm in a position of influence. Like if I have sadaqat and charities in my hand, or if I am someone who is in a position of authority where I need to discharge certain matters, I need to verify to the highest degree. I'm not going to take someone's word for it. I'm not going to. Husn al-dhan doesn't tell me to do that. I should not feel guilty when someone speaks to me in such manners because what? I need to verify. My deen requires me to do this because very often I might be feeding a person's addictions. I might be feeding a person's wrongdoing by giving them. I'm doing a nice thing. This person's taking it and doing an awful thing with it. Well, guess what? I just helped this person do that. This is how I should look at it, right? So, wallahu alam. So this is a very important point here too. That's the end of the section really. There's another paragraph, but you could read it on your own. In this book, you could go to chapter 20. And you will find more details, more examples on it. Read it on your own. We ran out of time. So the title is Al-Afkar al-Salbiya, Negative Thoughts. Right? You could read this section, chapter 20, on your own, and you'll find more information on it. Now we could turn to the questions, since we only have about 10-15 minutes left. Tamam. So does anyone have, until I open up the questions, does anyone have any direct questions they'd like to ask? Go ahead. What's your name, by the way? Asim. Ahlan wa sahlan. So I don't know of the first quote. I don't know. It's asl. It's I just didn't read it before. Maybe Imam Shafi'i did say that. But based on my understandings of the subject, the way that we would assess this is, Sayyidina Umar is speaking in the position of qada, the position of judgment. We're judging according to the dhawahir. When am I going to accept this person? Based on, I cannot assess this person on something that has no basis in evidence. Meaning, if what I see is good, I'm going to limit my judgment to them in terms of its goodness. If this person claims to be good, but their behaviors are all the opposite, I need to be judged based on what appears to me. So the Prophet ﷺ said something similar to it. Prophet ﷺ said that you guys come to me for judgment, and some of you are more eloquent in explaining their points than others. And I might judge based on what I hear for someone wrongfully, based on what I hear. So if I judge for you something you don't deserve, then make sure you don't take it, because it's a piece of hell. So this is what the Prophet ﷺ teaches us. So as for this statement, if Imam Shafi'i did say it, it would be like, if I need to ask myself sometimes, what's the point of making this judgment? What's the point of making this judgment to begin with? Am I getting anything out of it? All right, there's some alcohol in this person's beard. All right, sometimes people, some things. If I am not in a position where this information will be utilized in a critical way, then maybe I should err on the side of caution and have good assumptions of this person. Guess what? Like, say for example, say if someone had a day of barbecue with their family, they smell like smoke, right? Or forget about barbecue. Say if someone was in the car with a smoker and like all of their clothes are drenched in like this, very awful smell, right? Now, I meet this brother in the masjid. I have the chance. I have the opportunity right now. What am I going to do? I could either assume this brother is doing something that's sinful, haram, smoking is haram, or I could have this same, and in the end of the day, what am I utilizing this information for? Let me ask myself this question twice. If I'm in a position of qada, that's different. Let me be very, very, if I'm in a position, like if I am in a public trust, a position of public trust, no. I need to be very careful who I allow to assume something from this public trust. I need to be very careful about that. And that's why they actually hold a higher degree when it comes to shahada. There's more rigorous verification of the shahid if he's acceptable or not. But in terms of my brother, if I have no reason to have bad assumptions of him, let me just leave it. Let me leave it. That's how I understand it too. Judgment in qada versus, hey, you know what? Many things, they're not even worth my judgment. Let me just err on the side of caution. Wallahu alam. Allah yabarik feek. Who else has a question? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, so look, it's not easy for me to be that self-aware that I'm someone who is, because it's difficult to get to that position of spirituality where I could really trust my nafs. Like if someone is very unique in their relationship with Allah Azza wa Jal, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may give them certain signs that may make them comfortable in that this information is legitimate. But usually what we'll say to us, for us, the average person, let me always be very careful, because the nafs is whimsical. The nafs often clouds my judgment. I'm not going to accept it very easily. You're not just talking about any person. Like the Prophet ﷺ, when he spoke about this ummah, he said, "Inna min ummati muhaddathin." وَإِيَكُنْ فَعُمَرْ, right? This is not something that you just find, very prevalent among people, where they have this spiritual intuition, right? This is something that's very profound. And someone who has it, I don't think I do, and I don't expect I do, so maybe perhaps someone, once they get to that station, then they'll know when this information is false and when is it good. But for the average person, what did I just say about Sayyidina Umar? The Prophet ﷺ said, there are those from my ummah who have this ilham. Ilham is like this, it's this spiritual sense where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala casts certain things in their heart. And if there's anyone in my ummah that this fits to, it's Sayyidina Umar. Sayyidina Umar al-Faruq, right? So most of the situations we're going to say, hey, you know what? Accuse your nafs. Unless there is this clear evidence that Allah exposes to you, if you have a special relationship with Allah, then you can trust it as is. Wallahu alam. Yeah, that's what I would say. So it's not clear at all. It's only clear to someone who has a unique relationship with Allah. And whoever that person is, they would know. Wallahu alam. All right. So who else has questions? Yeah. Yes. Yeah, look, if someone comes to you, this is a good question. You know, if someone comes to you and tells you that person A, your person C, right? In that example we gave, your person C, person A, someone says, hey, you know what? Someone was talking about you and he said X, Y, and Z. You know what you should do as person C? Don't, listen to the verse. Don't rush to accept what person B told you. You know what? Let me go have a conversation because maybe something I did as person C clouded person A's judgment. Maybe it's my fault, right? Let me not be quick to get angry, Yeah, so this is what I would say to this person. Some people, and again, it takes profound character to be able to do this. Oh, someone just told me that, the Fulan was criticizing you and saying X, Y, and Z about you, right? What am I going to quickly do? I'm going to get angry. I'm going to go talk to Fulan. Who the heck do you think you are? مش عارف إيه, right? No, instead of doing that, he said, you know what, akhi, is there something I did that maybe triggered these feelings in you? And I don't want the shaitan to get in between us. That's being the bigger person. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Look, I see what you're saying. You don't want to, as person C, you don't want to expose person B. But sometimes, like, all right, if you don't want to expose person B, it depends on you. Very often, you're going to find a certain feeling that's going to stay in your heart. Should you allow this wrongful feeling stay in your heart without verifying with person A, right? Maybe you could talk to person B and tell him, reprimand him, hey, akhi, instead of coming to me, you should have gone and spoke to person A. How about you and I go to person A and let's clarify this as bro. That's the bigger thing. Because again, this is wallahi, the namima, this is firestorm that comes about on people. It's just like endless, vicious cycle. All right, this person gonna mad at this person, and then this person gonna. Sometimes people just need to grow up and say, you know what? In the end of the day, maybe I was a contributor to this misunderstandings. Let us forgive each other and let us grow because of it. This is something you could possibly consider doing. Take person B with you. Let's go together and talk to person A. Person B doesn't want to do it, I don't want to be involved, and then why'd you put the bad thought in my mind? You're the one who created this problem. You shouldn't have done this. It's your fault, right? So Allah alam. Huh? Yeah, because if you're unwilling to be direct, so the direct approach is the quickest one to resolving these relationship problems. If you're going to be this person who's hypersensitive, always indirect, you're going to live in a lot of turmoil forever. Allah alam. You have something to say? Not necessarily, unless if there's another way you could deter them. Like say if your sister really trusts you, and she's considering this person that who drinks alcohol. If you were to go to her and tell her, my dear friend, please take my word for it. I can't tell you why, but I want your best interest, and this is really not a good person for you. This person, I know certain things and I can't share it with you. But please don't get married to this person. If this is enough to deter her,